Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into some of the dirtiest facts about history that you probably didn't learn in school. We often think of history as this grand narrative of emperors and wars, but the truth is, life for most people back then was, well, pretty gross. So buckle up, because we're about to explore some truly shocking hygiene practices and unsanitary conditions that might make you grateful for modern plumbing. Okay, let's start with a classic, The Great Stink of London in 1858. Imagine the hottest summer on record, and now imagine that the River Thames, flowing right through the heart of London, is essentially an open sewer. For centuries, Londoners had been dumping their waste into the Thames. We're talking everything from chamber pots to animal carcasses, all stewing together in the summer heat. The smell, my friends, was indescribable. People said it could knock you over. And newspapers even reported that the stench was so bad, it was turning the paint on buildings black. Parliament had to actually abandon their meetings because the smell was so overwhelming. This wasn't just a matter of holding your nose, though. The polluted water led to outbreaks of cholera and typhoid fever, which were often deadly at the time. The Great Stink forced London to finally confront its sanitation problem. They started building a modern sewer system, thanks to the work of engineers like Joseph Bazalgette. It was a massive undertaking, but it ultimately saved countless lives and transformed London into a cleaner, healthier city. So, next time you complain about taking out the trash, just remember the Great Stink of London and be thankful for indoor plumbing. Let's rewind the clock a bit further to ancient Rome, a civilization known for its impressive architecture, military prowess, and, well, its rather unique approach to hygiene. You see, in ancient Rome, one of the most common cleaning agents wasn't soap, but urine. Yes, you heard that right. Human urine was collected in public urinals and then used to wash clothes. The ammonia in urine acted as a kind of natural bleach, helping to remove stains and whiten fabrics. And it wasn't just clothes. Urine was also used to clean teeth, cure leather, and even as a fertilizer. Now, before you wrinkle your nose in disgust, consider this. In a world without modern cleaning products, urine was actually a pretty effective and readily available resource. The Romans even had a goddess of sewers, Cloacina, which suggests they understood the importance of waste management, even if their methods were a bit different from ours. Plus, they had public baths, which were a central part of Roman social life and helped to promote hygiene, even if they weren't always as clean as we might like to imagine. Fast forward a few centuries and we find ourselves in the Middle Ages. Forget showers and toilets. For most people, daily life meant navigating streets that were, to put it mildly, pretty disgusting. Imagine walking through mud streets, littered with everything from rotting food scraps to animal dung. And if it rained, well, let's just say it wasn't pretty. See, without proper sewage systems, all that waste just kind of accumulated in the streets. And it wasn't just unpleasant to look at, it was a breeding ground for disease. Rats, flies, and other vermin thrived in these conditions, spreading illness as they went. In fact, the Black Death, one of the most devastating pandemics in human history, was spread in part by fleas that lived on rats, which were all too common in medieval cities. So, while the Middle Ages might seem romantic in books and movies, the reality was a bit less glamorous, and a lot more smelly. Now, given how unsanitary conditions were throughout much of history, it's no surprise that people got sick. A lot. But here's the thing, for centuries, people didn't really understand what caused disease. Enter the miasma theory. This theory, which was popular from ancient times until the late 19th century, held that diseases were caused by bad air or miasma. Think about it. When you're surrounded by rotting garbage and human waste, it makes sense to think that the smell itself is making you sick, right? So people tried to avoid breathing in bad air by carrying scented handkerchiefs, using perfumes, and even avoiding swamps and other smelly places. While the miasma theory was eventually debunked by the germ theory of disease, it did lead to some positive changes. For example, people started to recognize the importance of fresh air and ventilation, which helped to improve living conditions to some extent. Let's jump forward again to the early 20th century and the trenches of World War I. If you thought medieval streets sounded bad, well, the trenches were a whole other level of awful. Imagine living in a narrow, muddy ditch for months on end, constantly under threat of enemy fire. Now, Add in the fact that you're surrounded by thousands of other soldiers with very limited sanitation facilities. The trenches were a breeding ground for disease. Lice were rampant, spreading typhus fever. Rats, drawn by the abundance of food scraps and corpses, spread trench fever and other diseases. And then there was trench foot, a painful condition caused by prolonged exposure to damp and cold conditions. In severe cases, it could lead to amputation. The constant shelling churned up the ground, turning the trenches into muddy quagmires. Soldiers often had to wade through knee-deep mud, which could quickly become contaminated with human waste and other filth. The conditions in the trenches were so horrific that they left a lasting psychological scar on many soldiers, even those who were lucky enough to survive. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed learning these dirty facts about history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more fascinating content. See you next time. And hey, next time you're feeling grateful for modern conveniences, remember the great stink of London, the urine-washing Romans, and the soldiers in the trenches? We've come a long way in terms of hygiene and sanitation, and that's definitely something to appreciate.